Welcome to the eCom Collab Club podcast, where operators, risk takers, and battle-tested founders drop the lessons that cost them time, money, and their sanity, and share what actually works so you don't have to pay the same price. Hosted by Peter Gardner and Adam Pearce, founders of the eCom Collab Club and Blend Commerce, the Shopify CRO agency, and proudly sponsored by OmniSend. Email and SMS marketing so good, it's boring.
Hello and welcome to the ECC podcast. I'm Adam Pearce and I'm here with Peter Gardner. Now, guys, today we are asking a simple question with a very tricky answer. How do you persuade shoppers to add one more item to the basket without losing that initial purchase and still having them rushing back for the next order? Now, to guide this, we've got someone who's raised baskets and repeat orders across luxury makeup, prestige skincare, fine jewelry, and much more. And that is none other than Lorna Patterson. Now, Lorna's going to be sharing with us what's worked, what's bombed, and how to keep first-time conversion, basket size, and repeat purchase playing together nicely.
Hey, you know that feeling when you're about to buy something online, but whoopsie, the checkout's an absolute mess. No autofill, no saved card, and no Google or Apple Pay. And suddenly your wallet feels a very, very, very long way away. Yeah, that's a potential customer gone. And guess what? 77% of shoppers do exactly the same thing if their preferred payment method isn't there. That's a lot of lost revenue for brands. Now take that mess globally. What works at home doesn't work abroad. What's the most popular payment method in Germany or the US or Singapore? Not sure? 77% of local shoppers could be dropping off. And don't get me started on the sneaky currency conversion fees some payment providers are adding. If you're a scaling international brand, don't let payments trip you up. Go to airwallets.com and give your customers a premium checkout experience. More conversions, more revenue, less hassle. How's it going, Lorna? You doing all right on that side?
Good, thank you. It's sunny in Scotland today, which makes a change, so I'm very happy. I know. How are you guys?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I was just thinking our viewers might be getting quite confused with the different accents getting thrown in this episode. Huh?
I think we should change accents halfway through as well, just to really confuse the shit out of everyone.
I've got a bit of an Aussie accent. You guys can go with something else as well. Lorna, for everyone else who hasn't stalked you on LinkedIn yet, who are you? What do you do? What do you lose sleep over? And how did you end up hearing these big, fast-growing beauty brands that you're doing with the online sales?
Well, I've been losing sleep over e-commerce for about 6 or 7 years now, I'd say. And yet the bulk of my experience has been in luxury beauty. So I've worked for brands like Dior before, Chantecaille, currently working for a startup indie beauty brand, which is really exciting. But my experience also covers luxury jewelry, and I've done some commissions as well for luxury jewelry brands in the past too. So yeah, I've always been in kind of the premium kind of beauty luxury space.
What was the interest? What got you started in that?
I just decided, I think my aunt bought me like a makeup set, like when I was like younger, like in high school. And I was like, do you know what? I want to work in makeup. And I really stuck at it. So like during my time at uni, I worked on makeup counters and really tried to kind of learn everything on the ground and like really kind of made a bullseye to head offices as soon as I could once I left uni. So yeah, it's always been like a passion, but it was more a general marketing role. And then I got really lucky when COVID hit. It was actually kind of the same time I was asked to launch this D2C for my brand Chantecaille at the time, which was brilliant. So kind of it was quite opportune being in e-com since.
Yeah, oh, that's really cool. You started out obviously selling directly on the floor, you say, and then I suppose that gave you the groundwork on, okay, cool, this is how you do it in person. This is how you do upsells, this is how you do cross sells, and then bringing that onto the online experience. Have you found that very beneficial?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I've listened to the podcast before and like gone to the eCom Collab Club, but it's something people talk about is actually, that face-to-face time with the customer. Definitely don't underestimate it, or don't underestimate the learnings that you can take from it. So it's something I still try and do today, actually. But yeah, it's definitely been quite fundamental, and it's something that I still apply today to ecom learnings.
Yeah, and then obviously you've been in ecom now for a while. So what's your proudest e-commerce nerd moment so far?
Probably when I was at Chantecaille, I launched the loyalty program there. And I think that was like a really big moment. I was probably, if anyone in Yotpo or knows Yotpo joining, I was a really big pain in the neck, but I got them to customize it to the nth degree. Like I really tried to get them to push the capabilities, and I think they actually changed some of their kind of structures and how they kind of like modeled their work with brands afterwards, which was probably, I don't know if it's a proud moment for me as much as like just kind of being proud I really pushed them. But yeah, that was definitely like a moment in a really successful loyalty program launch. So that's definitely one that sticks out so far.
Yeah, I mean, knowing the guys at Yotpo, they would have been all up for that.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's what they're trying to do, and that's them speaking to their customers. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I mean, look, I want to talk to you about obviously the kind of the core bit of today, which is about sort of upselling and that piece. What I'm kind of curious though is, in terms obviously with luxury, when I think about luxury shoppers, look, my experience and my thought is on this. Look, they don't like that hard sell. Why should a brand try and upsell then, or cross sell at all, if they are in the luxury space?
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point, and it's something you do have to be really careful when you're working in premium and luxury. And I think it's really, really important to come across as not squeezing the customer. I think if you're upselling in luxury, it really has to be a curated and enhanced experience, and kind of leaning more into that educational piece. So I'll maybe give like 2 examples. But when I worked in luxury jewelry, I worked for an engagement and wedding ring company. And obviously, that's a very significant, often once in a lifetime purchase. So you really want to be sensitive and not diminish someone's choice. So if you're choosing to upsell within that, you really kind of look at it from the lens of, okay, if I'm going to suggest another product to this customer, how is it adding value? So what we would do is, say the customer was choosing from a particular collection of wedding rings, for example, and it had a particular engraving. It might be that the upsell that we propose and layer into our D2C to kind of retarget them is another type of engraved wedding ring, but it maybe has a different type of engraving, a more specific pattern, and then you start to build into more of the storytelling piece to really kind of elevate it. And I think it really has to be really meaningful and genuine. So you're able to kind of communicate the genuine added value rather than it feeling like a gimmick. So that's definitely like a key piece, I would say, when you're upselling in luxury. Definitely it's more about kind of storytelling, like education, showing the genuine added value, and that's kind of coming across in terms of your PDPs, like how you're like advertising and communicating the products too. And then in cosmetics, I'd say it's more nuanced, because I would say it's less common from my experience to try and upsell. You're not trying to kind of get the customer to deviate from a product they've already decided upon. So it's more about cross-selling and giving like a complete look. But I think the same sentiment still applies, where you're trying to kind of tailor it based on more like an educational perspective, like what 2 products actually do work together, rather than, what we're trying to get rid of from a stock perspective. So you do have to be a bit more considered, I'd say.
Because I think, it sounds to me like it's quite a difficult task, and I guess to kind of come up with those upsells and cross sells that are sort of meaningful. And I think we're going to talk about sort of the tech side of this and maybe how you do it a little bit later on. I suppose the other thing is, I guess, from sort of the follow-on from that is, how do you kind of spot when that extra offer either helps the first sale and obviously the future sales as well? Is that something you track, and is that something you can kind of be aware of?
Yeah, for sure. And I think what made it almost easier in luxury jewelry in some ways was because although it was a D2C based business, there typically had to be some kind of in-person contact, or at least a phone call or email. So actually what we found was we got that first-hand feedback from the customer, which was really helpful. So we kind of like understood almost directly from them, actually, I really loved that suggestion on your website, I moved forward with that, or this is why I didn't, it wasn't quite within budget. So we were actually able to take more kind of real-time learnings, and obviously it's a smaller pool of customer. But yeah, I think in cosmetics, where it's like a larger, obviously it's more kind of of like based purely on the insights and the data of the D2C. It's more like based on looking at your analytics, like checking if it's impacting conversion rate, looking at your lifetime value, checking like your metrics of your AOV, your average unit sale every day, to see if that's uplift is happening. And if you're using like a tech stack like Rebuy, for example, obviously you're able to apply A/B testing to that too, so you can really see if, you know, it is having like the desired effect.
On that front as well, sort of finding out from customers there, obviously you've mentioned obviously Rebuy, look, well, it's a great tool and we use that a lot with our clients. I think the other side of it here is on kind of more the sort of the qualitative side, what's your kind of thoughts on net promoter scores sort of immediately after purchase? Like, is that something you think that can work on the space you've worked in? And what's your experience have been of that?
It definitely is. I think a nice example I've seen recently is Astrid and Mayu do like a really nice one kind of like post-purchase as well, and kind of asking, you know, where the customer like kind of found like the D2C originally, but also kind of what their experience was like navigating the site. So I think as long as it's done in like quite a soft way, it's definitely kind of worth doing, especially if you've maybe made a recent change to your D2C, or like you've relaunched the site, or if you've made any kind of significant change. I think that's quite an important piece to implement. Maybe even like tying it into your loyalty program, so actually rewarding customers for the feedback is also like a really nice way to do that as well. But I do think it's pretty invaluable, and as long as you're rewarding customers for the feedback rather than what they say, you know that you're going to get like a genuine insight too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things, you know, that when we talk to brands about sort of, you know, finding out from customers and talking to customers, that there still seems to be a bit of a fear around doing that. And I suppose, you know, what I was thinking is on the luxury side, do you think people are more forthcoming to give feedback when it is, you know, higher values they're purchasing? Or do you think it's all the other way along, in the sense of, look, they're coming in for that item, they kind of care less about giving that back to brands?
Yeah, I definitely think you can do it across the board, but I think the depth in what you'll get from someone can vary depending on kind of how luxury the purchase is. So for example, in I'd say in luxury engagement in wedding rings, when I worked, it was actually quite a simple thing to do. Like often, you know, it was such an emotional purchase as well. The customer typically did want to give that feedback. And I think we almost had like a 98% like testimonial rate where people you know, wanted to share that feedback on their experience and wanted to kind of almost from almost a personal point of view give like a note to that moment. So I think that was like a really simple one, but kind of going back to what I said about the depth, it was more they really kind of cared about that full like journey, like what the interaction was, like how much, you know, time they got with them, the consultant, for example, after they'd maybe made the purchase online. So you were really able to get that kind of deep dive. Obviously kind of in more kind of masstige or premium cosmetics, it was more for me about kind of generating reviews quite often on the products, and then kind of the service experience on the D2C was more like a secondary piece, like post-purchase.
Awesome, thank you very much. That's great.
So Lorna, we're going to change lanes a little bit here, because I want to ask you more about people starting out with upselling and cross-selling. Like, look, it's great for a lot of big brands. Cool, you've got those sales and you get into upselling and cross-selling. And one of the easiest places normally to start is actually to start just bundling and actually curating bundles for your customers. When you guys set out to do this, and I noticed when looking at some of your heads right now, you guys have sets. Yes. When you guys first set out to do these sets, how are you guys going about creating this for one, but then also going, okay, we've got a few things to consider here. We've got to go, we need this to make sense as something for the customer to buy in a group. So do we discount it? What are the margins that we're losing here? The other things that you've probably got to think about, how do we put these bundles together that actually makes sense, that it is a bundle that people are buying? What's your guys' process?
Sure. I think the first piece is looking at the best sellers, to be honest. Like, I think that's like a really kind of easy way to kind of start looking at what, you know, customers are typically, but especially actually I should say like first time customer best sellers is something that we looked at, so that we're looking at kind of what products are like a big kind of attraction, what's kind of the low hanging fruit, what's kind of drawing customers to the brand as that first piece, and that being like a core skew within the bundle offering. I think that's like a really good way to start. But like going back to that educational piece, we'll also speak to like our education team, like our makeup artists, and really talk about what products complement well together so that it's really kind of genuine and authentic, especially when you're like a founder brand as well. Like you can do something with like a more of a founder look too, and something personalized like that can really work well, especially if, you know, the customers do have an affinity with the founder. And I think that can work across like all kind of product types and markets as well. I think people really kind of like buy into that kind of more personalized piece. So I definitely say that's one to look at, like in terms of acquiring like new customers. And then in terms of price point, it would start by looking at your average order value, kind of what's typical for your new customers, and look at kind of like pricing it competitively within that too. And then I guess you're looking at like your CPA, like when you're looking at your financials and your margins to understand, you know, how much is a new customer worth to me? Like what does this mean in terms of them buying this set and really becoming onboarded onto the brand? And I think that's the other important thing to mention is like, although it can sometimes maybe be tempting to get rid of your, I don't know, your high stocks or whatever, it is important when you're thinking about that lifetime value to make sure that it's genuinely, you know, products that you think your customer's really going to be won over by, that you move forward with too. So that's like a really big piece. And something I'm a big advocate of is actually just asking your customers too. You know, you've got, even if you don't have like a, you know, like a more of like an affiliate channel or something, like you've got broadcast channel now, for example, so you can start to kind of personalize and ask your customers, you know, what would you like to see in a set, and you know, take that qualitative feedback into your bundles from there too.
So you're looking into the past orders as well and see what naturally people are bundling themselves, and then when you're looking at the margins that you're cutting out there to get that saving, to make it a little bit more attractive, are you going, look, this thing fits in a box with it, we're going to save a bit on shipping? Are you going, you know, ultimately we're not paying to acquire this customer again, so we can pull that portion out of this? Or how are you coming up with that margin that you can pass on to the customer?
Sure. I think it always helps when you've got like a good finance team, but like it's, you know, I think about looking at your COGS, like you say, like your shipping, like looking at your full P&L, and then also maybe agreeing like a timeline so that you're not potentially making any losses. So if you say like, we'll try out this bundle for like six weeks or so, like you can then kind of look at your financials after that and understand if it was really kind of like worth the return. So yeah, that's definitely like going through that kind of due process is worth it, and kind of giving yourself a timeline to test.
Can I just jump in for a second on that one, actually, because I'm interested about the bundle side of things here. One thing that I think, you know, is always something that's top of mind when people are selling bundles, and I think probably even more into kind of the subscriptions element as well. Is there a concern that then hurts your LTV down the line, in the sense that when people are buying bundles and maybe have too much product initially, or do you generally find, you know, or have you seen that kind of when you do that bundles and sets option, that kind of locks people in for longer because they are having more product and they've got more of the product range? I'm just curious to see kind of whether you think that sometimes it can be helpful or a hindrance.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a really good question, and something maybe men as well, but women watching the podcast will definitely understand. It can be very hard to actually run out of your lipstick, finish your lipstick is a really big one for us. So I think that's a really good point. I think integrating different kind of types of products that have different kind of replen rates is also something important to kind of consider too. But from my experience, bundles, if it's done correctly, you're onboarding the customer, like making them like a fan of the brand, and then you've got your MPD launches coming up. You know, you've got different categories that you can start retargeting to them too. So I wouldn't say if it's done correctly, it's damaging the LTV, especially if it's acquiring like a new customer. And the other piece is bundling is often used from like a gifting perspective too. So, you know, from that perspective, it's not hurting either. It's almost like acquiring a new customer potentially from that perspective as well. So yeah, it's not something I've had a concern about before. And then from more of a luxury jewelry perspective, obviously with engagement and wedding rings, lifetime value isn't a thing in some ways. It's more about that engagement ring to that wedding ring purchase. So when we looked at, not necessarily bundles is maybe not the right word, but we look at like complementing products. And it wouldn't necessarily be an offer, but it might be something like complimentary engraving if you purchase your wedding ring with us after your engagement ring, things like that too. So that's a more kind of like luxury way of tying, you know, two products together in quite a nice kind of elevated way.
You mentioned the lipstick there being something that people don't run out of very quickly. So obviously that's going to be hurting your repeat purchases. So when you're putting these bundles together, if lipstick is one of your key acquisition products, do you look to go and bundle that one with something that is a little bit more, a product that's a little bit more sticky, something that people are going to use it quickly and have to come back to site? Or is that not really something that's going through when you're putting these bundles together?
It's definitely like a good thought process to go through. I think it happens quite naturally for us. Like, and although, like I said, like quite often, like people won't finish a lipstick, it doesn't mean you don't buy another one or you want another color. I know I work in cosmetics, so I'm really bad for that, but I think a lot of that is like a typical kind of thing in cosmetics. Like you don't always kind of finish, but you are still kind of like buying, maybe you want a different shade. But to answer your question, I think it can happen quite naturally, going back to that education piece, where, you know, you're bundling naturally kind of products that complement each other across categories. So say it's a face product with like a lower replen rate, that kind of, you've bundled that naturally together because they actually do work together, but you're also benefiting from the fact the customer is going to run out of that quickly. And to your point, like in your CRM pieces, like you can work at retargeting those kind of like faster replen products, as well, so that you're kind of like encouraging that LTV moving forward too.
Yeah. So the last one for me on bundles, when you obviously, when you put these bundles together, are you giving the customer the ability to customize that bundle and change, like you said, the different shades of lipstick in it? Or are you going, this is the shade, this is what it comes with? Essentially, you need to go to a different product page if you want a different type of bundle? Or is there more flexibility that you're offering? And what do you find is best?
Yeah, I've done both in the past. I'll be honest, I think being a startup, I think often it can be like the set bundles is a more kind of controlled way to do it. But previously, when I worked at Chantecaille, like I worked in building like a skincare quiz, and that was our way of bundling products. And I mean, I love doing, and I'd advocate for something like that in the future as well. Is we basically kind of worked with our education team and kind of like curating these questions, like working on that content and really helping to like pair the customer to like that kind of like that full kind of like product look. I think that's like a very effective like bespoke way to do it. But I'd say from my personal experience, it was customers who were more kind of like advocates of the brand who liked to go through that journey. Like it's still a time investment for the customer. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well. Like your new and your returning customers might have like a different way of kind of navigating it. Sometimes I think a new customer does want a bit more just a bit more ease in terms of just choosing something, and kind of taking your guidance and trusting you more as well. But yeah, that's definitely, and that's another big thing in cosmetics is shade matching online can sometimes be like a barrier to purchasing online too. So there's a lot of new technologies and tools that are out there too that allow you to, you know, feel a bit more confident in your shade choice, so that you are able to personalize that bundle as well.
Yeah.
On that tech front as well, Lorna, you mentioned obviously Rebuy, and we've talked about sort of tech in general, sort of frequently bought together. The customer was bought. Obviously, we use it ever in eCom. Do you generally let the software pick the add-ons, or does your team curate them, or is it a mix? Like what and why, really, I guess, is kind of what I wanted to ask on that one.
Sure. I think at the moment we take quite like a hybrid approach. I would say that I kind of do the AI piece first, genuinely because we're a startup and a lean team. I wish I had the time to curate it more, but it just isn't always possible. So I think knowing that it's more focused on that recently viewed, or it's taking those kind of like AI learnings is really helpful, to be honest, for a startup, and being able to trust the tech is like a really important piece. But where I do make those selections is, for example, we have like a festival themed look on the website just now, and you know, we're making sure that the products are more kind of tailored to that theme, so we're taking more of control of that because that's something that we're kind of like promoting as a campaign. So yeah, it's really interesting to kind of test that those AI results versus the ones that we're kind of pre-selecting at the moment, to see what generates, you know, the best return.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, yeah, that's kind of the nice thing is that you've, with the AI that is built into a lot of these tools as well, it's kind of giving you another option for your own internal testing, isn't it, as well? I think it broadens that field somewhat. I mean, on that kind of front as well, have you ever had a kind of a pairing with in-term suggestions you've made that's really surprised you when it comes to sort of raising that basket value?
I think one that potentially surprised me was we had a upsell product that I thought was going to do really well. Basically, I was sure like it felt like quite a universal product, and I just thought it was going to be really like popular. And actually what I found was that because we were giving the customers the option to choose the shades of this upsell product, they were coming out of cart and maybe not converting as much. And it wasn't a big enough pool for them to then go back to basket. And then what we adjusted was more of like a set product without kind of as many shade variations, and that actually did better. So yeah, I'd say that was one that kind of surprised me, because I always think initially the logic was like more options can be like a really positive thing, and it lets the customer like choose their shade, but actually kind of consolidating that decision for them actually performed better for us.
Yeah, because I think this is the interesting thing. I think with kind of beauty, wellness, or anything I guess is sort of imbibed as well, is that I kind of feel in some respects, like you mentioned there, when you have too much choice, does it bring more of that fear in the sense that, when, for example, with shades, for example, you're kind of looking for that hand-holding, that guidance from the company. Whereas I suppose that when it is something that you're not putting on your skin, or is a particular look, maybe the bigger choice that is there is more helpful, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think that's definitely something I took from it. And like you say, maybe that's something we need to kind of tailor more to like new and returning customers too. But we found that consolidating the offer slightly for the customer to make it a bit less complicated for them actually works better. So yeah, I think it's that balance between choice, but also trusting yourself as the company, as the expert, and the kind of the educational voice for the customer too, that they're able to believe in and be on board with.
And I suppose the other thing as well is like with the technology side here, and kind of using those insights you've got obviously as a team, when you look at obviously what tools are available at the moment, is there a tool or is there a feature that you would love to see that would help with that process?
I definitely so we're using Rebuy at the moment. I think there's definitely scope for Rebuy to develop and like enhance those processes more, like giving you more options in terms of A/B testing new and return customers. If it was possible to do that, I think that would be like a really helpful tool as well. And I think also maybe in checkout, if there was a way to showcase, say you are offering like multiple variants in like an upsell product, for example, or a G with P, being able to offer like, I don't know, like a clearer way for the customer to choose the shades without leaving checkout, because that's something that we've noticed, like when we're offering variants, is that we see the customer leave checkout, and then you're always at risk that they're then not going to convert when they've already been there. So I think something that keeps them at checkout but allowing them to view their options more clearly from like a shade perspective would be really cool to see.
Rebuy, if you're listening, get working.
Yes, please.
It's awesome that you've transitioned to pretty much what I'm looking at here. That frequently bought together in cart and trying to get those purchases. One of the things that I picked up with what you were saying there, the fact that you've got those options and then you're getting people that are leaving the experience you're trying to get. For me, it's the equivalent of you've gone into a supermarket, you've gone down the aisles, you get to the end, and at the end there's normally 2 or 3 easy, quick little chocolate bars that you can buy. They don't put their whole range there. They just put what they know is the bestseller, the lowest cost, a quick little grab. Because if they put the few there and then you look at the few and you go, oh, that's not my favorite, you're going to run back to the chocolate aisle and you're going to go grab one from the actual aisle. So you're running backwards and forwards at that point. So that's sort of, and then you have the risk of someone running out of time and not being able to purchase in time and things like that. So yeah, I love to learn from real retail and how to then bring that into the online stores. Talking about in the cart, notice that you guys have the shipping bar, progress bar, and for me, the thing that is probably the most effective to get people to buy more is your free shipping limits. That is the one that like it either pulls people up or it pushes people down. How are you guys finding the use of that when you implemented it? What did it do for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, instantly, our conversion has been, touch wood, increasing as time's gone on, and definitely the implementation of Rebuy has helped. And then, yeah, it's definitely something we probably do need to A/B test more, but we have like kind of based our shipping based on our financials, and then also what our AOV is. Basically, that's how we've done it. It's not something I've A/B tested probably as much as like we should, but it definitely kind of helps, and it is that pull for the customer too. Something that we're working on though is including more free shipping messaging in our PDPs. I think that's a really nice one to make sure that you've got as well, and keeping that messaging consistent across all of your different touch points in the DCC is super important too. But yeah, that in terms of making that decision though, it was based on like our financials and like our AOV and kind of taking it from there. But a next stage is definitely to A/B test.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you notice any decrease in conversions when you guys did this?
No, it did lead to an increase. Like we did it with a G with P upsell as well. So we implemented both at the same time, but it has improved like conversion significantly since we implemented for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that we always say. When you're implementing these upsells and cross-sells, make sure that you're not hurting your conversions to a point where it actually makes no sense for the upsell. You guys also got free gift as well. So you've got 2 tiers. You've got the free shipping threshold, then you've got free gift. How did you guys work out those thresholds for somebody that's looking to do this? How would you advise them to say, okay, go and look at this, go and do that in order to get to these limits?
Sure. I think firstly, something that we did initially was we offered 3 tiers, and that actually ended up being too much. And we found it was confusing the customer, and they weren't, maybe that's another thing for Rebuy, but I think stacking your G with Ps and gifting could maybe be done in a more kind of like lucrative way at checkout potentially. But anyway, we found that 3 was too much. So we actually pulled back to 2. And then in terms of making those decisions, we made free shipping more of like the entry kind of like qualifier, if that makes sense, to the kind of the first rewards, and then the gift is the second. And I think that works like really well, to be honest. I think the complimentary product piece definitely pulls that customer in. I think the shipping is more of it's a nice to have, but in terms of really boosting your AOV, the free product is really what moves the dial.
Oh, that's interesting to hear. What are you revealing what that free gift is? Are they able to choose something, or is it that a complete like, we're going to surprise you, we're just going to send you a free gift?
No, we do. We give the customer the option, and actually it was the comment I made earlier. We originally had a product that had more variant options, and we found that wasn't working. So we actually changed it to a product that still has variant options, but it's a smaller amount, and it's less of a the product that we had before was basically a bronzing powder, but it had lots of different kind of like shade options, and that is a more considered purchase. It can take a bit more time for the customer to consider kind of getting that right, whereas we changed it to like more of like a lip gloss type product, where the customer felt a bit more, I think, reassured that they were getting that added value, but it felt like less of a shade commitment, if that makes sense, or maybe like a less of a need to research the shade, and that worked better in cart than the other one.
Yeah, and circling back to the bundles question that I asked you as well, is this a sticky product? Is this something that's going to drive people back by gifting them this one the first time? Are they going to come back to store to try and buy it themselves the next time?
Yeah, and I think it's so we picked a product that wasn't maybe necessarily in our top 5, but also it was like, from an educational point of view, like a really strong product, and it is going to kind of like push customers kind of back to the site and kind of win them over. So kind of what I was saying before, like it's that educational piece. It is really kind of looking at products that are of like a really good quality and not including them just because you're necessarily high stock. That's definitely something that we were mindful of when making these selections.
Yeah. Awesome. And then you mentioned you had 3 tiers within that progress bar. What else were you guys doing?
So it was free shipping, 1 free product, and then like another free product. Okay. And I thought I was being really generous. I thought we were going to be able to, really see that return. But actually, it was really interesting to see conversion and AOV increase when we actually pulled that down to 2 rather than 3. And the third one was like a higher AOV as well, but it just it didn't land. And I think like the reason, like I said, was because it was a bronzer with multiple shades, and actually maybe something like that doesn't work as well in cart. You do have to consolidate the options for the customer more.
Yeah. Is there space to possibly test something that isn't product related, that maybe is like, more on the loyalty side or rewards and community building, anything like that? Is there space for you guys to test something like that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's something that's I'm seeing more of in cosmetics as a trend now. Like, I don't know if you know, like Rare Beauty, for example, or Vive like Beauty, like they do like a lot of like merch as part of like their upselling now. And I think that's like a really kind of clever way to to do it. I mean, this is like quite a big thing in the industry, but Rare Beauty brought out like a dog toy. Nothing to do with cosmetics, but they used that as their upsell, and actually it was more of like a lifestyle piece, but really kind of tapping into like so many more like people now own a pet, for example, and it really kind of like helped to boost like the AOV, and there's a lot of case studies around that too. So I definitely think the merch piece, carefully selected, is a really nice choice, and then you're not detracting from like the product piece as well, and also it's not a multivariant situation either where you're kind of confusing the customer. It's really more of like an enhanced kind of brand loyalty piece.
Lorna, awesome. On all these, obviously the items we talked about there, these sort of benefits, in the past sort of 12-18 months, there's been a lot of move to kind of taking all of the things that you spoke about there and then kind of putting that into a membership program. So tools like Inveterate out there that kind of do this, where you're kind of moving away from that sort of traditional loyalty style, and you're kind of saying, look, you buy the membership, which then enables you to get the free shipping, the free gift, all that kind of stuff. Is that something that's appealing to you, or are there any kind of, major red flags for you, and kind of if you were going to go and do something like that you'd want to sort of nut through first before you went into that?
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting direction. It's something that D2Cs definitely do need to consider. The loyalty piece is so important because you're essentially, I think for us, like you're competing against like your e-retail partners, and obviously there's a huge pull for e-retail partners because they've got like a multitude of products. Like there's a lot of advantages. So what you can do that's different and more lucrative in your offering, like, is something you have to really consider. I think the idea of like having that kind of like almost like a private access to exclusive offers definitely appeals. I think it still feels like it's in relatively early stage in terms of customer adoption, so it feels like more of like a pioneering piece, but definitely like a lot of opportunity and maybe something to test as well. I think in the beauty space, someone who does this really well is Beauty Pie. So yeah, I don't know if you've heard of them before, but they have like a kind of access, like it's more of like a subscription, and then you have like all of the benefits. But I think it's that line between making sure the customer isn't fatigued. I think customers are just so impatient now. Like I think trying to onboard them to something like that is a risk, but it's potentially something worth trying.
Cool. And I think we've spent a lot of time obviously so far sort of talking about sort of the PEP, the on-site part from an upsell and cross-sell perspective. If we think about the post-purchase side of things, then talk us through, once obviously an order is complete, what do you guys show first? Is it you might also like page, an email, a text, and kind of why do you do that in the post-purchase part?
Yeah, so I mean, transparently, that's something that we're kind of working on at the moment from my at my current company side. But like when I worked at Chantecaille, something that we really kind of focused on was the founder storytelling piece. So yeah, in terms of like a new customer, like a first-time customer purchasing into the brand, like the next email that they'd receive is like more of like a deep dive into the founder story, along with like a follow-up code. We did both. Like we did like an option of like a code or like a product for the customer to redeem if they onboarded onto our loyalty program. So that was something that we did, and that was like a really nice push as well. So yeah, that's definitely something like I'd recommend, and sometimes giving the customer again like the option is actually quite a nice piece to work on too.
And would you say there's, if you think about kind of the different post-purchase journeys you've worked on in your career, has there been any that you've kind of done as a post-purchase nudge that you've gone, look, this gave a massive lift?
I think the one at Chantecaille was when we launched the loyalty program, and we were able to start trying to onboard like first-time customers who'd maybe not signed up to the loyalty program, like more product options. Like that definitely was something that I saw like more of like a return from, because the way we set up the loyalty program was the customer was able to then choose, depending on their spend, like it was more kind of merch that we did, and the customer was then able to choose what they redeemed like with their next purchase too. And that was definitely like a nice piece, and rewarding customers for that sign up was definitely something that we saw help kind of like pull people into a repeat purchase that had just that were just new to the brand.
And on the flip side, have you ever done anything that you think has really sort of annoyed or pissed off customers or hurt your repeat order rate?
I think there was a brand I worked with where we were really trying to like promote reviews, and possibly a bit too aggressively and without reward as well. So actually that was a learning for me. I think, the reviews piece, I learned that we probably need to reward customers for their time if we're really trying to secure that review sometimes. I'd say that was definitely a learning.
Thank you.
So Lorna, when you guys trialing new upsells and cross sells, what safety checks do you guys have in place to make sure that you're not, you're protecting that conversion rate, not only the conversion rate, but also how you're protecting that repurchase rate? What is it that you guys do to safeguard here?
Yeah, I think we if we make any kind of change like that to the D2C, like we put in place, we have like monthly kind of like round robins where we go through kind of like the sales, like any impact that they've had, and like I think the answer is like keeping a close check, and especially in those early days, to make sure that there's no issue, and having like multiple members of the team check, like really kind of basic things like that. I guess from like even like a loyalty perspective, something that we did sometimes at Chantecaille is anytime we made like a change to the site, we'd actually email like our VIP customers and almost level with them and ask for their thoughts and advice. And like we knew that we were going to get like that kind of like really genuine feedback, and they were actually sometimes the best people to call out if there was a problem. So that's definitely something I'd recommend as well. If you're able to cultivate that loyalty piece, like, lean on your customers in a really positive way, but like, they're the best people to tell you when something's wrong or when something's not working on the site often.
Yeah, I mean, you started this episode with exactly that, talking to your customers and the importance of it. But I think there's so many brands that are so scared to it, and especially to go and talk and try and piss off their best customers.
Yeah.
By saying, hey, we've just done this on site. Can you give us your feedback? It's pretty scary. I mean, yeah.
I'd say like my personal experience whenever we've done something like that, and maybe it comes from like my time working in counters too, but it's never been something I've been nervous of, to be honest. And in my experience, especially when it comes to your VIP like customers, especially I think maybe because I've worked for a lot of founder brands, that like a lot of our VIP customers really did have an affinity to the brand and genuinely believed in it and wanted to help. Like, for example, Chantecaille was very much about sustainable beauty, and it was about giving back to animals. We did a lot of philanthropy projects with different animal charities. So the customers that were there like really did want to see the brand succeed and kind of saw all of the other efforts that were going into it too. So it kind of genuinely felt like quite you were able to have those more kind of honest conversations, and they genuinely wanted to see the brand succeed.
Yeah, you get buy-in because they feel like they're part of it. They feel like they're helping you grow your business. And normally, like you say, these are founder-led brands. They're small. People are buying into it, and they want to see the person succeed because they want to be part of that story as well.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult in cosmetics now because it's becoming a very saturated market, but also in a really positive way. There are so many startup and more kind of like founder-led brands that are kind of coming up from the ground up, and they're really kind of sharing the details of that experience now, like all of the highs and lows. And I think sometimes when you're like a mid to high level prestige brand that's maybe got like a longer legacy, it can be hard to know how to interact with the customer when you've had a more kind of traditional perspective on it. But I do think brands are starting to evolve and adjust to that now because they see the market's changing.
And thinking about all the questions that we've asked you today, what's one tactic that we haven't touched on that you're going, this is something people need to try? We've done it with X brand or whoever it is, that's worked really well.
I think just going back to the post-purchase, something that we're trying just now is like an immediate post-purchase with Rebuy. So I'm optimistic. I probably can't say like how it's going to work yet, but I think like really keen to see like that more like immediate post-purchase offer and to see what impact that has now. Directly, like once the customer's checked out, is something I'm really interested to try and see if that's working. But yeah, I think that's my general feedback is just to test like as much as like you can and kind of like give yourself time to test, especially when you're a startup. It can be really hard when you're in a lean team to kind of make that time. But yeah, the way you're going to hit on something kind of like more of like a gold nugget is if you do give yourself a bit of space to actually be creative, whether it's every other week or so. But yeah, definitely give yourself the space to try new things.
Yeah, and on the flip side, I know you've touched on one that on paper looked like this is going to be brilliant, but it didn't work out. Is there any other tactic that you've gone, shit, we tried that didn't work, we can't do that one again?
Yeah, I think there was a time at another brand where I thought we were going to do like a really nice piece on like basically we did like a storytelling piece on like this kind of like stock that we were trying to move. It kind of, maybe that's why I'm kind of like cautious of high stocks now, but we did like a storytelling piece, but the customer had probably already told us they weren't interested. Or, you know, it just wasn't a big mover. So I was kind of trying to revive the product, not even from like a discount point of view, but try and elevate it for purchase. And we spent, I think as well, we spent quite a lot of time, you know, on the marketing, like on all of the content, like really trying to push it. And we didn't see like any left, like hardly any like incremental sales despite all of those efforts. So I think the learning I took from that was, you know, when the customer tells you something, like believe them. And yeah, just be kind of like concentrated in your marketing efforts. And if you do have like high stocks, there's maybe other channels to go down.
What about the tactic that a lot of people do use with buy more, save more, and things like that?
Yeah, it's something that I to be honest, I've probably not done just as much of like in my time looking like luxury, but trying to think at Chantecaille, we did something once where at checkout, if the customer got to checkout, they then got access to like a product on discount. Or like it was more like a, you know, once you've bought or like once you were about to check out, you then got this product exclusively at this price. That did work fairly well. I think that was something where it was kind of like a buy more, save more that we did see perform.
Yeah. Did it hurt your repeat purchases anyway when you did that?
Not with that one, because the product that we were looking at was it wasn't quite like a sample size, but it was more of a deluxe. So it was seen as more of like a trial piece. So though we discounted it, it was like kind of like an entry level product anyway. So yeah, I think it actually complemented quite well, and we were able to still monetize on even like a trial product. So yeah, and I think that's actually something I'd say as well. We did like a mini fragrance set at Chantecaille as well, and again that was like a kind of an intro set and like more of like a experimental piece. But yeah, I think customers were willing to buy because like the price point versus what our kind of like standard pricing or full size products was quite low. So it was kind of like a nice kind of check-in piece to add.
Yeah, awesome. Do you sell stuff online? Then you need OmniSend. Yes, that OmniSend. The powerful yet refreshingly intuitive email and SMS tool that helps you make $73 on average for every dollar spent. Like watching steady lines go up and up and up? Just automate your email and SMS campaigns with OmniSend. Set it up once, then sit back and watch the sales roll in while you snooze. You're still awake? Then go to omnisend.com/ECC. Give OmniSend a try and start getting sales so steady they'll definitely put you to sleep. Don't forget to use code ECC30 for a 30% discount.
So, Lorna, we've got some quick fire questions to kind of round us off today. And obviously, guys, if you've got any questions in the audience, do pop them into the comments and we'll fire those over to Lorna as well. So, Lorna, I'm going to get started. And you don't have to name names. You can if you want to. But the first question is, what's the worst upsell that you've seen out in the wild?
So I won't name the brand, but I was shocked. It was in cosmetics, so maybe people will be able to figure it out. But it's a well-known cosmetics brand, and I just remember seeing, I was like kind of having a look at their cart one day, and they had like a mug, with like a smiley face, and it had like their logo at the bottom, but like it looked. I was so shocked, like, because often tote bags are used in cosmetics, but it was just this mug. And it's something you might see, I don't know, like if you're buying cars or Moonpig or something. And I was really shocked. I was really shocked they were doing it. So definitely, I don't know if it was something they kind of got merch. And it kind of comes to my point. Like, I think when you're in luxury or premium, you can't just, even if you've made a mistake and you've like maybe got like a mass merch product, you can't just try and flog it. You have to be considerate. So yeah, definitely that one.
Yeah, I remember the tote bags well. I think we had a project in we picked a few years ago where we had to like custom code in a free gift before the ability was there, and it was a nightmare, but it worked really well. And people love tote bags, which I find bizarre, but hey, there you go.
Tote bags have stood the test of time for sure.
Exactly. Random question from some guy called Rich Evans. Never heard of him. He says, "Who's your favorite out of Adam or Bob?" Choose one.
It's an unfair question. Very unfair. Bob's growing on me since the podcast, I have to say. I'm enjoying the Australian accent. So it's made it more of a tie.
I think that's the first time ever he's been chosen over me, but hey, we'll move on very, very
quickly. I said tie. Thanks for that one, Rich.
One small change any shop who can try this week to raise the basket.
So speaking to beauty specifically, definitely like a shop the look, you know, especially when you tailor it, you execute it right with your marketing. I think that's a really good way to do it. And if you're a founder, it's a no-brainer to try something like that.
This might want to be a bit more tricky, but if you can only pick one of these, gift, bundle, or suggestion, which is your favorite personal favorite? Which is your personal favorite nudge?
I think a gift is an easier, in terms of a quick lift. I like a gift. I think that's like a quick add to bag, and like I've always seen it guaranteed almost, as long as you do select the right product to boost AOV.
Okay, so let's paint the pitch here. You have a brilliant weekend. You get into the office on Monday morning. You open up your laptop. What's the first metric you're going to check on that Monday morning?
So I mean, apart from the sales, I'd probably say like the revenue split by channel is like a big one for me, and the new and return customer, like more of like a deep dive into that as well. And then I really love that Rebuy's got its own kind of metrics platform as well, so definitely that's one that I always look at on a Monday. I have to do I do my team's like kind of ecom meeting at, I think it's 9:30 a.m. on a Monday, so I don't get a lot of time on a Monday morning to to round up my stats.
Yeah, that sounds brutal.
Yeah.
So finish this for us. A classy upsell feels like.
So I actually got given this advice at Chantecaille, and I try and stick to it. It's what would a beauty editor recommend to complement the product. So it kind of helped me kind of stick to that educational lens, and like what actually makes sense versus sometimes more of my ecom cat. What are we trying to push? So yeah, that would be my advice.
Thank you. And the last one is, what would you say is your favorite e-commerce experience with the best user experience?
Oh, that was probably the hardest question so far. I have to say I have really enjoyed the Vive website at times in the past. Like, I think they've got like a really kind of like streamlined checkout experience. Like I said, I think they're really nailing the merch side of things as well, and kind of elevating it to the founder piece as well. So I'd say that's a really nice brand example of a good checkout experience in UX.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Well, look, Lorna, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And look, what's lovely is like you've given us so many kind of practical examples, which we absolutely love to kind of have on the show. And it's really important that kind of we have that, because look, people come to this to learn and to find out things that, you know, people like you are doing. So if people want to kind of find out more about you and connect with you, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, follow me on LinkedIn. I've realised that I've got my middle name just now, but it's Lorna Iona, or yeah, Lorna Patterson. I'll probably try and change it. But yeah, feel free to reach out. And yeah, thank you so much. Really enjoyed chatting to you today.
Pleasure.
Thanks so much, Lorna. I really appreciate you, and thank you so much for those value bombs. It's really nice to pick someone's brain that's actually doing this in the wild and testing it on the levels that you guys are doing right now as well.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like I've taken a lot away as well today to try out. So yeah, thank you so much. You picked my brain too.
Awesome. Cheers.
Thanks, Lorna.
Bye.
All right. So we are sticking around to talk a little bit more. Just touch on a few more things that Lorna had touched on, and we're also going to talk a little bit more about our own process that we follow in terms of the buy trifecta, the buy now, buy more, buy again, and how each one of those affect everything that we're doing. So, Mr. Adam, what kills more upsells than anything else right now?
I mean, Lorna kind of mentioned a good example there. It's really kind of these shitty upsells that make no sense. And I think, you know, that's one of the things here is, look, the play, of course, is that we're trying to raise that AOV, we're trying to raise that basket value. But I think the problem is a lot of the time when you're looking at those upsells, they tend to be in some instances where you're trying to shift stock. Mm-hmm. And in the sense of you doing that, then I think the problem is that actually it stops the customer buying, because they see actually another product that maybe isn't actually as good as what they've been purchasing in the first place. And secondly, I think, you know, when it's so unrelated, it kind of questions the validity of that brand. Yeah. And I think, you know, the thing is for me with upsells is when you are thinking about an upsell, for me, that upsell should either complement the original product, get them to use more of it. So like beauty, for example, if you've got a toner and a cleanser, those two together should be there. So you've got, again, both of them being used together encourages the next purchase. Or you are doing something whereby, for example, if you are having kind of those tester packs that Lorna was talking about, then encourages the next sale. So for me, I think the real problem with upsells is that it needs to be not just about that upsell at the moment. It needs to be thinking about how does that transaction then lead to more LTV or higher LTV in the future off the back of it.
Yeah. For me, I'm still, and I touched on this with Lorna, and I love the way that she got around it with the tactics that she was using, and that's that buy more, save more. A lot of brands do it because they go, we want to upsell more, we want that basket size to be bigger, but what they're not really understanding is, you're making it cheaper, but that basket size becomes bigger. It becomes a little bit more expensive for somebody. But also what happens is that person purchases, but now they're not coming back until that product finishes, which could be months after. In that time, they've probably been targeted by your competitors. They've probably tried something else somewhere that they might have preferred. You've given them the ability to go out and actually understand the rest of the market and actually go, hey, hold on here. Yeah, I got a big saving when I bought this in bulk, but I'm not willing to go and buy this in one product because it's too expensive. And my price point was lower. That's why I bought it in bulk. So you ultimately you rob yourself of those repeat purchases by getting somebody to buy more right now. Yeah. And you lose all that margin. And I just feel like, that's one. It's like cutting off your nose to spite your face. It's like, why? Just so that you can get the money today, but you're never going to get that person as a repeat purchaser.
No, totally. I mean, question for you, actually, thinking about kind of like the buy now funnel, where do you think the usual leak is that when brands sort of bolt that sort of, bundle on too soon? Is there a point where you think people break that?
I think my biggest issue with people focusing on the buy more, when we say the average order value, when people are trying to build up their basket size, so many brands are trying to do that before they've actually even nailed conversion rates. And we know from working with it, your conversion rate is actually the thing that's it's going to be easier for you to fix conversion rate. Average order value is something that's quite difficult to budge. And when you do budget, you don't budget by much. It's not like you can all of a sudden go, my average order today is $50. Tomorrow it's $100. That is a very difficult, slow process to get to. You can increase it gradually, but normally this works for bigger brands that are more established. Somebody that has that brand trust, they then can work on the upsells and their cross sells. And I know I'm probably not answering your question 100% here, but I feel like when you're a smaller brand, you should really be focusing everything right now on that buy now. Everything should be focused around removing friction from the checkout. And to answer your question, your answer is it adds too much friction, especially if you're doing that upsell and that cross-sell in a way that it's an intrusive pop-up that pops up on screen. And you've now got to do another decision. You've got to go, oh, well, which one of these upsells do I want? Do I want any? Don't I want any? And you're just overloading. It's cognitive load, making people make more decisions when ultimately your brand, if it's still small and it can't afford to do this and actually suffer from conversion rate loss, you're losing the ability to get that person to just buy once, and then all your tactics that you've got after that to get them back to store.
Sure.
And I think a lot of brands they're doing too much. They're starting their brand, they're offering subscriptions immediately, they're offering loyalty programs immediately. They've got upsells and cross-sells with pop-ups. They've got it in cart, they've got it in checkout. It's like, don't do that stuff until you've nailed your buy now and your conversion rate is actually something that, you go, I'm driving traffic, but I'm getting people to convert. This is great. Now I can start bolting those things on and testing it. And then, like we were touching on with Lorna, we're going, when you implemented that, what did it do to conversion rates? And checking it and making sure that you're not affecting that element when you're doing those upsells and cross-sells. Sorry, very convoluted answer there for you, but I feel like it's important to bring that context.
No, it is. And I think, what the interesting thing as well is, look, Lorna made the point, didn't she, again, with the kind of the shade selectors and saying that, look, they trialed it where they were giving, a bountiful, group of, bountiful, that's a good word, group of sort of upsells. but it didn't work well because the customer ended up being confused. And I think you're right. There's the play for this bigger AOV and getting the LTV up too soon. Well, like you say, it should be about kind of the first principle. Let's get the first order in. Let's get them coming back, and then let's think about subscriptions, the add-ons, the bundle, all that piece down the line. So, yeah, I think you're right. It's a timing thing, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. So, another one for you then. What's a big red flag for you when you're looking at data and you're looking at a brand and you're going, okay, cool, you've got upsells. Now, the easy answer would be say conversion rate here, but something else that you might be looking at and going, this is happening, this is hurting you because you've got those upsells and cross sells.
I think the biggest thing for me is when we kind of look at checkout and abandonment, because ultimately then those stats are indicating to you if they do obviously have those upsells into your actual process, that people are actually navigating, because if you've got someone to that point where it's got into cart and then they're going to checkout and then they're actually abandoning, that big gap between the cart abandonment rate and then the checkout abandonment rate, that for me, that differential is the biggest thing, because you'll be able to see from your data there actually what people do actually have in their cart, and you can see off the back of that then actually whether it's making an impact or not. And I think I'm not necessarily convinced that stat is looked at enough. And I think generally, in e-commerce as well, because we always get fascinated in ecom, don't we, about sending abandoned cart emails or sending push notification abandoned cart emails. But it's the abandoned checkout and the gap between the cart and the checkout for me that's the real decision making point there. That's where you can really lose someone. And if you don't track that, and you can see that actually it is based on particular product, or if you've got a product that we would kind of class as toxic when we kind of look at our reporting, where we can see that is the case, that will be something for me. I think you just got to pay attention to, because it's not being done enough at the moment.
Yeah, I think, to touch on that as well, there's probably one metric that looks great on paper when you're doing it, and that is time on site. And you're going, oh, this is great. People are looking at more products, but it's exactly what Lorna touched on earlier. Her upsell had something in there that was causing people to not stay on the checkout or on the cart. They were going back to the product pages to go and look at the options for that product. And ultimately, we know that, yes, that's more time on site, but that's more time for friction. That's more time for them to bounce. It's more time for them to go, oh, I've run out of time to purchase today. And ultimately, that metric itself, although is awesome, cool, we got people to be on site longer, can actually be a big red flag as well. Yeah. When you're looking at what's the impact of this thing that we've added on site.
No, totally. And I think, it's the whole thing, isn't it, here about that time on site piece. I think it's good you brought this up, is that the thing that we spend a lot of time looking at is actually search data on site. Because if you do have a bigger dwell time or a bigger time on site that you see that metric increasing, looking at heat maps and looking at your site search data can actually give you a lot more. I mean, I know we've kind of looked at this in the past, but when you look at your search data on site, the amount of searches that come back, we've seen it as high as 75% come back with 0 results. So if that time is increasing, what are they doing? What are they looking for? Does that also then give you more ability to then run more tests on site to actually see if you can solve the problem in the first place?
Yeah, you've just jogged my memory as well in terms of site search and navigation. A lot of people, and even I said in the beginning, one of the first places to start is to look to do bundles and things. But essentially, one of the best places to start with trying to increase your average order value is to look at your navigation, see if it's simple, see if people can actually discover your product, see if your search is spitting out great results. Because if you can get people to use those things more efficiently, product discoverability becomes higher, and there's more likelihood that they're going to purchase more products from you as well. And also the speed around that as well. And I think it's often overlooked to go, well, we're looking to increase average order value. Well, improving your site experience is one of the easiest and quickest ways to actually make sure that you do that, just by making it easier for people to navigate your site.
Let's have some fun with this one. And you probably got plenty of examples of this, but what is the shittiest, laziest copy that you've ever seen in carts that tanks that
Frequently
rate?
bought together.
Yeah.
I mean, look, that's a double-edged sword, though, because frequently bought together, it's commonly used. People recognize it. You quickly understand what's there. But at the same time, you can be so much more creative with that.
Mm-hmm.
You can be like, I mean, I'm struggling to even think of examples now, just because this is it's such a quick win. We've tested it a few times, and the results are always crazy. When you get something that's brand specific, that really makes sense. And I think you even posted about this on LinkedIn today, didn't you? So you can actually give us the example, can't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, we've run a test recently, basically with a car brand that we work with, and what we did is we basically added in one line of copy underneath the call to action button that was more centric around actually what that brand was. And if you want to see it, I'm going to tell you. Go to my LinkedIn page. Did you like that?
Cheeky.
Cheeky. But the point is, with that, it uplifted the conversion rate by 19%. And a lot of people are very quick to kind of poo-poo copywriters and, we can GTSI for it, whatever it might be. But the point is, the copy on the site is really important, really freaking important in the upsell process. And yes, look, there are some great tools out there. Lorna mentioned a few, but ultimately at the same time, if you're not putting that graft in of working out what it is that those customers need to hear, then that's something important. I think, the other one I wanted to talk about here too is, in terms of that frequently bought together, it's like you say, it's such a crappy way to phrase it. Customers like you also bought, this pairs well with, team it up with, all these things are very, very small changes. But I think the best one that I've ever seen is, there was actually a lighting, microphone, and basically a company that produces equipment for recording podcasters, all that kind of stuff. What they did with their
something you don't have today.
Pardon?
Something you don't have today.
Yeah, I don't have today. But what they did is, in their frequently bought together, they had a section which said customers who viewed this product went on to buy, and there were basically 5 product blocks below that. And it basically had a percentage of the customers that have viewed that product and then gone on to buy that other one, and it had reviews below it. And I thought that was actually genius, because it's like, you do that as a shopper, don't you? You're looking for that comparison. You're looking also then for that social proof. Whether those stats were real or they were BS, I'm not sure. But I thought that was a really smart move to go, oh, actually, yeah, we know these customers are still in shopping mode. Put these products below. I'd love to see what the results were on that for the conversions.
Probably good. If you thought it looked good, I say that dangerously. If you thought it looked good, it probably could. Never ever listen to that advice. Looking good does not sell more products. It's all about timing. It's all about usability. So should we end this episode on one final little piece of contrarian advice?
Go for it.
Don't do upsells and cross-sells if you haven't nailed conversions yet.
I think that's a great way to end this episode, especially given the title.
Yeah. Sounds brilliant, guys. Listen to Upsells and Cross-Sells, how to do it in e-commerce. Don't do it. Definitely do it if you can afford to do it, but don't do it if your conversion rate sucks. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. And if you are listening on Spotify or on Apple Music, do give us a like and a share or a review. It would be much appreciated. And join us same time next week for the eCom Collab Club podcast. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the eCom Collab Club podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, and join our community at ecomcollabclub.com/community.